everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to put in a large 7-inch by 20-inch deep by 48-inch tread stone. Stone weighs about 400 or 500 pounds, so it's not something that you can just pick up and slide in easily. The best way to move this is using leverage and putting it on pieces of wood and allowing it to slide into place. We'll show that later in the video. What I'm doing here, you saw where I marked on the wall, I marked a 14-inch height. I'm going about an inch and a half below that because I'm going to use a loose aggregate setting material on top of the compacted crushed stone that I'm putting in. There I'm just shoveling the stone in. I want to stay about an inch to an inch and a half below that 14 inches. Why an inch to an inch and a half? Because it's the ideal depth for a loose aggregate with a stone that size sitting on it. It just sets nicer and it stays put at that depth. You can go thinner if you're that good. I push the level around and make an impression on the bottom of the level all the way across and front and back, kind of like a T, so that I know where the level line is and I break off that. So you wonder maybe why I was using the level around there. I actually looked at the level line. Watch the marks on the back of the wall and make sure that I'm within an inch of that. Just keep adding pressure run a little bit at a time until we get to our right. And after we get the crush to close to the desired height, we run over it with the vibratory plate compactor, or vibratory plate clamp, as people call it. It's just packs the gravel down, the crush run down nicely. Stone, I keep saying gravel, but it's not gravel, it's actually stone. So that's that step, and then we dust it, add a little bit more until we're within our desired inch to ½ inch for loose setting aggregate. Here I do the important step of benchmarking. You see, I put the level right on the end of the capstones above because those capstones have pitch or wash on them. They're not dead flat front to back. They do pitch down about a 1/16 on 6 inches or 5 inches or whatever. It's about an 1/8 per foot. So you see here I'm checking front and back. Run that level dead flat off of the top stones. Now I want to be more than 14 inches. That's why I paused when saying it. More than, because as they say, up hole, down the hole. Down the pole, up the hole. And there you go, dusting some more. And we'll show you some more tricks here. Okay, so you saw how a gravel rake is more beneficial than most hard-tine gardening rakes. I actually like the larger flat-bladed gravel rakes because you can use them upside down as kind of a, what they call a come-along. That's to help smooth things out. That's the final step. This is our final lift here with the crush run. There I'm double checking again. Run that level flat and level off of your top stone, benchmarking off that top stone down to 14.5, and there we are raking in the loose aggregate. I think I had between 3/4 of an inch and 1/2 an inch here by the time I was done. It looks like a lot more, but I usually run a pile in front of my actual set base. And there I'm watching the lines on the back of the wall as I'm raking in. So here you'll see a lot of back and forth between using the level, benchmarking. I even put the level down on the grit and double check. I check my distances front to back. There's a lot of things to check here. I fluff the front edge with the rake because when I slide the stone in, some of that grit's going to go down. And there I'm building up the final height and lift. And here I double and triple check. Now I'm front to back length for that stone. Trying to get the hump out of the middle. It's a little high in the middle. So I always go higher and then bring it down, because when you bring it down you're going to see those lines appear. And with the back side of the rake you're actually flat, so it's easier. That's why I build up higher and then scrape down lower. It really does help things to have a little more material. You see there, I knock it in. It's called knocking it in because you actually do knock it with the level. You knock your line. So there, I am setting up to move the stone. First thing we want is a ramp or a slider, a point at which the stone is going to sit on a fulcrum. That is actually the fulcrum and the bedding for the stone to move forward on. You'll see what I mean as we go here. You can use a shovel. You see how I'm just using the shovel and leverage. We use a lot what is called the rowing method and the fulcrum. You see there I added another piece because I wanted to get it as close up to the height of the pallet the stone is coming off of as possible, so the front edge of the stone wasn't digging into the fulcrum that it's going to end up on. And here I just walk it end to end, bit by bit. Take my time, don't hurt yourself doing this. These are heavy. As you get that tipped forward, it's going to be easier to move. The lower you get the other end, the easier it's going to be to move. Now you have it balancing. You can get a bar in there. Mind you, using the bar, just make sure you're not pushing against the front edge of your stone. And you see here, now I'm getting onto the fulcrum board. As I move it, lift it, move it forward, lift it, move it forward. Now I'm starting to pivot it. And I'm going backwards here because the end that is closest to the pillar is actually the end that's going to be on that side when I lift the other side and bring it around. I kick that lifter board out. That could be used as leverage. It could be used, oh look at this, I'm using it as another fulcrum point. And just slowly walk it around. Walk that piece in. I call it walking them in. And you see, lift, lift and pivot, lift and pivot. It's just that simple. This is how you move big stones. It's how you move them safely and easily. Just using shovels and pry bars and chunks of wood. Now, the back of that is digging into that second fulcrum, which is kind of what I wanted because that's helping me pivot it. You see, now this is double leverage. Everything's working together. And here, I hit the block that other fulcrum is on. So now I need to lift it up over and use that other fulcrum as a different type of fulcrum. See, it's all pivot points and fulcrums. You can do this if you just take your time. And it sometimes, it took me years to get really good at this. But it was kind of a natural thing that I took to and enjoyed doing. Now, the reason we wanted to get it up on that fulcrum is because now our front edge is up. That's a 1.5, or what they call a 2x6. So it keeps our front edge, it keeps it from tipping forward and messing up the grit when it hits the grit. When it hits the grit, it's flat with it. As I lift and row, now I'm lifting that stone back onto the grit. It's not pushing any of that grit out of its way. It's sliding back flat off the top of the grit because it's up on that 2x6 or 2x4 or whatever you want to call the fulcrum in front that we started on. I'm just using the rowing technique, and eventually you'll see it slide right off of that board. When it's sitting totally flat on the grit, it's going to slide right off that board. Here I'm doing the other end, and there it's just about off. There, we're about 100% on the grit now. You'll see me just pull that board right out of the way soon. And that's the trick, is basically you're picking the stone up flat and setting it back. If you could pick that stone up all at one time, lift it, keep it at the level of the grit and slide it back. That's what we're doing here, but we're doing it with just one person. So that's why I use all the boards. And this is important. As you're rowing and you're setting a stone, you want to keep it lifted up. That's why you saw me lifting up and dropping it a bunch of times. It's already in. It's at the level we want it. Now I'm just using a block up against the nicely rock-faced thermal edge so I don't chip it with the bar. And see there, you have to stab that bar in pretty far. You don't want it to slide out. It's a big heavy stone, so there, put that block in. You see how little I move this. I'm just centering it up right now. That's all we're doing. And there, our stone is pretty much in. Now we rake it out. Next, we're going to gauge it in. We're going to make sure that stone is centered. Gauging, we use a center line. How do we get a center line? We take our point of reference, which would be the door. We measure the exact measurement from inside of trim to inside of trim. We go exactly in the middle of that, then we split it in half. That is our center line, and then off of our center line, we measure out half of our stone width. Our stone width here would be 46, so half of that would be 23. Because the stone is 48 and it has a rock face is about 1 inch in on either side, but it's hard to measure off a beveled edge, so we go off the chiseled edge. You could use a level to plumb up and get it all perfect, but that could also throw you off. So I just go off the chiseled edge. It never comes out wrong. There's a gauged in stone set. Check our level, check our wash. It can be off by a 1/16 or so. Not the worst thing in the world. It is stone. There you see I have a little bit of wash, left to right. And front to back, we check our front to back, side to side. That's how you make sure everything's parallel. Now we're going to check our height. Run that level flat. There we're checking our distance, front to back, going off the chiseled, where they set the chisel to do the stone edge, not the very front of that stone edge, because that is not always exact. Here we plumb up. It's called ranging in. There you can go off the face of those rock face caps, because we know those are set. Those are set to a string line. So we know those are relatively straight. There it is. You get your numbers almost exact. You see I'm doing some ledge stone veneer on the bottom. There you see that top step. You see how I got it up there? Now, I didn't take a lot of pictures once it was up there, because I was hoping to do video, but things came up. I just used 1/2-inch pieces of plywood to slide it back very carefully, very slowly inched it back, using pry bar and a block. There you see a little bit of my veneer underneath the pillar. You see there before I started my veneer. But yeah, hopefully I will have some more videos on this. The thumb has healed nicely. That was another veneer job. I don't like doing veneer, but hey, thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next